It's not a drawing. It's not something that we keep on paper. Architecture is something we have to go through, go around, and so on. For that, we need the money. Of course, Zalek is mentioning about money that would motivate us to do it. But in Ethiopia currently, there's a lot of money, maybe not motivating the architect, but motivating building, constructing, meaning putting bricks with bricks and coming up with a building. So money in Ethiopia currently is influencing architecture partly in the positive sense as well, because there's a lot of investment on buildings. There's a lot of buildings coming up. Now the trick here is, and the unfortunate story we all, at least people practicing, know is the payment is still not enough. We still yearn for a client that would pay us enough. Like Zaleka said, there are many projects we have gone in with my partners from Beta Architects that we bid for a project and seldom win if it's a financial if it's a financial bid, because we value the product, not the drawing. And to get to the product, it's very difficult to assign a figure to it. But imagine a scenario where, in today's context, that you don't need to be paid for designing. Let's assume, for discussion's sake. If we don't need to be paid for designing, or there was, let's say, a fund, an architecture fund in the state that would pay architects, what do you want, 10%, 15% for every building they design? If that was the situation we are in, then money is influencing, money can influence, the money that is changing hands in the country currently can influence architecture for the best. The times, the early days of maybe the or the early days of the Derg, for example, or mid-Derg days, architects really had no job. Correct me if I'm wrong, like Michael Tedros was I think, a practice that was working through that time. There weren't many offices. Today, 2 years after school, you can set up your office probably. I'm not supporting it, naturally, but there is the demand. There are buildings springing up everywhere, meaning there is money changing hands. There is money going into building, constructing buildings. So money is influencing buildings in a positive way. But since we are not, or since we are claiming that we are not paid enough, we are not delivering the service. This, I think, is an important situation we are in. We can understand it that, oh, he's not paying me, so I'll give him 5 units when I'm supposed to give him 20. But imagine if you can give 20, and if money was not an influence for you, then imagine what we can do with the city currently. Because we don't practice to the limit of what we can because we are not getting paid. So this is what I have to say on this.
Thank you. With this, we go to the next subject, which is capacity, which I think is a very important subject as well. Of course, we can talk about intellectual and physical and so on capacities. So the question is, what is the working atmosphere and environment you intend to create in your offices in terms of intellectual, administrative, and physical capacity? I would not explain more. Maybe we start with Aman.
But, I'm not sure if I clearly understand this question, but allow me to explain in the way I feel I have understood it. Like this. The kind of environment I aspire to create, I can't claim I have created, what I aspire to create is a common understanding in my office that architecture is a process from idea to a product, from idea to a product. The understanding of this concept will immediately do away with the thought of design being finished during the design stage. Design is well alive during the construction stage of a project as well. And whatever environment created in an office should support a person to understand this and to practice this. Of course, in any business, the business has to flourish. There has to be strategic goals. Very seldom architectural firms are conversant in business, simply because there is the thought that architecture is art, and the practice of architecture is also artistic, let's call it for now. And in so doing, miss out on the fact that the practice of architecture is a business. You have to run a firm. At the end of the month, you have to pay salary to your staff. Staff have to get a PC they are working on, a laptop, a desktop, whatever. So architecture firms need to be organized in such a way that the movement of an idea to a product has minimum obstacle, let's call it. And not many offices, maybe even internationally, are well aware of this. There are offices that work on, on a project, let's say, like a tailor. You do a suit. When you are done, you do another suit. I am not too supportive of this kind of approach. I would aspire to create an atmosphere in a firm that allows for architects, 1, 2, 3, as many architects as there may be, a smooth ground to transverse from idea, that first flicker, to something that we see and touch. And for this, there has to be a strict strategic approach for the firm. There has to be a supportive unit, the administrative unit. The architect should not go into the details of managing a firm. It's also recent history that we have seen the older offices not growing into big offices. I understand people like Norman Foster operate offices in different countries, not cities. I can't imagine how we can do that even here, because if I'm the head of the office, the design firm in this case, and if I'm not there for 2-3 months, it's very likely that the office will suffer. But these are architects working internationally, from Hong Kong all the way to London and all the way to New York, managing thousands of people. Imagine the project sites and the number of people on those sites. So we have to find a way of creating a working business model which can help us to not defragment. Because currently, bigger offices, after a certain stage, defrag to create smaller offices. And this is recent history. We have seen, offices that were there at the turn of the political regime are not the offices we talk about today, except for a few. And I think this is because the atmosphere has not been created. The atmosphere allows for defragmentation. I remember an interesting talk that Ato Ermias Amelga gave when he was introducing the access real estate. Then it was a project because it was not a company yet. And he was saying, after a few years, we will buy distressed real estate companies. Meaning integrating, because the market will not allow for so many companies. So I see a time in the near future that architecture firms will start to integrate. Of course, this also goes with regulations, by the way. If I'm practicing with just a laptop on my lap, and calling it an office, then this can't happen. But there will come a time that clients will start to demand the kind of architecture we're talking about. That cannot be delivered from the lap of someone with a laptop. And then offices will start to integrate to create bigger firms and maybe work cross nations. I don't know, but I don't know of a practice in our country that has two offices. One in Addis, maybe another one in Bardar, or another one in Mekelle. We commute. Very often, the owners commute. So the kind of, I hope I'm making sense. I don't want to repeat.
I would say there are maybe two kinds of offices which can be created, or which maybe are also present here. One is an office which can grow, and one is an office which may not grow. An office which can grow may have two aspects, but I only know one. It is an office owned by an architect, and we may have many architects in the office, and we may get a project, and then you can distribute different projects to different architects, get a design, get into construction. This is a kind of an office which can grow, what I say. I own an office which cannot grow, because I take a project from a client. I take full responsibility already when I take it. So I have architects who would work with me. So what we do is we take a project, I think, they think, so we try for an idea. And I believe in my way of working and way of understanding architecture is architecture can be done as a team. It can be done. Provided every team member is very active, very alert. It's like solving a problem for me, architecture. Everything is a problem. Say you take a project, there is a certain problem, you discuss about the problem maybe when you're together, and then maybe one of the team members come up with an interesting idea. So if it works, you take it. I think it's a process, as it was said. So for me, the atmosphere I would hope to create and hope to work with is a team who is very alive and who is very eager to throw ideas into a project. Of course, since I have the responsibility, I am the manager of the office, and the responsibility, maybe if there are decisions to be made disputable, probably I could take that decision. If it is agreeable, we will take it. The reason why I think that everything works this way is, for me, sometimes I go into a site, which a project we have finished very well, and then a simple mason can come up with an interesting idea. Sometimes he would do a part of a project you're doing. Sometimes it could be by mistake he's doing like that. I say it is a mistake because of my way of thinking, but instinctively, he is doing it correctly. And then if you are alert enough, you can pick up his idea because he's doing it correctly. Because by instinct, he was doing it correctly, but by design, you're trying to do the wrong thing. So I believe as an architect, as a team, although young architects sometimes think design freedom in a different way, I believe everybody can contribute into a team. So the way I think of a team working and a team in my office is people who are free to throw ideas and participate in a design. That's how we work also. And quite many times we could get stuck in a project, but somebody unexpected would help us to go through to the next step. So this is a kind of group, I think. But as I said, I find it difficult, this office growing into a large office, which Aman was saying, and I really wonder, these great architects we know who have still doing great projects, how do they do it? How is a miracle happening? I really don't know. But for me, it's very limited. Yeah.
Maybe just to add one thing. I think one important environment I would see created in an office I would be successful to run would be an office which gives architects the chance to see the mason, to be the mason sometimes, if they feel like it, you know. Renzo Piano, I think, he said that he even calls his office Renzo Piano Workshop, is it? Like?
Yeah, that's his office.
The name, it's a workshop, meaning they try details one-to-one scales when necessary. This will be a great success, I would say. By that, I would like to make the boundary between the design process and the construction process very gray, meaning, you know, you don't draw a specific line, meaning you start construction and you still design. Imagine getting a chance to do that. In today's context, I remember we were on a project, and the client suddenly, in a meeting, Danny, you remember, they decided that any variation of 5%, of more than 5%, was almost going to take us to jail. Meaning, this immediately limits. I'm not saying, of course, you know, we should be fantasizing and projects should overrun budget, but the freedom of making changes during construction, during the construction stage, is a very critical necessity, I would call it. So the environment I would like to create, or I would like to work in, is an environment where 1 minute I'm sketching, maybe drawing also, and the next minute I'm allowed to build myself, getting dirty, let's say. I think this will change. This will change the cityscape if most of us start to practice in that manner.
Thank you. Well, I think this is the stage where when I start to go into your practices and analyze it in a way which I think most people understand your practice. And I also will use your projects and also your words, which we exchanged, to analyze this, and then I may take a little bit of time, and then we go to the question. So, Zalak Abalai, you said, my dream of an architect is a traditional model, an architect who was once a master builder and who understood fully the process of construction, but later who passed it over part of the process to another professional when he realized could be delegated without him losing control of the product. The architect was able to produce more buildings when he transformed himself from a master builder to a pure designer. He separated himself from the direct cutting and assemblage process of architecture, but yet was still in full command of the product. Whereas Emmanuel Tashoma said, architects in Ethiopia should be like the architects in the Renaissance period, master builders again. I believe in the ability of the architects to break down ill problems and assemble them back after solving them. The ability of the architect to glide in thought through the various scale levels in search of the optimum is a truly amazing capacity. This has the power to transform a nation. This capacity of the architect is applicable to more pragmatic activities like design, manufacturing, construction, administration, leadership, or the less pragmatic like painting, music, art, love, etc. I will highlight some words. I don't know if it is visible, but the red ones, for example, on the top, it says master builder, okay. And in the Legas terms, control is very important. whereas in Manuel's terms, various scales, gliding through various scales is also important. Again, with Zerleka, pure designer, separated himself from the direct cutting and assemblage process of architecture, but yet was still in full command of the product. Of course, I'm trying to dissect words to find a point. Whereas, like I said, Emmanuel said, pragmatic activities like design, manufacturing, construction, administration, leadership, or the less pragmatic like painting and so on, are important. This, I think, is also more visible in your practice. I would pass quickly through your practice. Thank you, by the way, for letting me into your practice. This is a LAFTO project, I would say. I guess most of you have already experienced the space, at least with a visit, which was organized by the association in collaboration with Zerleka, of course. And then we have the stairs, which is office building where Zerleka is practicing right now, and Awasa students' lounge, students' cafe, where the dining place is. We can go inside and see the design qualities and so on and so on, but I'm not focusing on that for now. I prefer to stand on the practice, the focus practice. And then Emmanuel Teshome prefers to pass through different lines, like here we have the drawing board or the working table, and then we have the side. I would put this one in the middle. Another project already built. And here is another image where management or supervision is also put as a very important practice. So the question is, how would you like to be labeled as architects? Would you like to be labeled as architect, planner, project manager, builder, and so on? Or would you like to be labeled as architect?
I think the meaning of the word architect for me, people think architect means a single person. I think architect for me is everything, that one, because the word architect for me is like a word which is synonymous with consultant. You can call an architect, a consultant working in architecture, architect. But I know now the word is used to denote a single professional, and it has lost its meaning in architecture, but it has gained its meaning in politics. Because in politics, they say the architect of this change, the architect of so. We have lost the word, I think. And we have to bring it back by practicing it. Why we have lost it is we're losing it because we're not protecting it, we're not practicing it. I think this is where, as young architects, we should work, and we should gain back the true meaning of the word, because the word didn't come just as a privilege, but it was the reality of an architect. He has been dealing in this total level. So for me, I would like to be called as an architect, but with that meaning, not as a single person.
Maybe again, again coming back to your way of practice, I sense that both of you have somehow succeeded in two different ways of practicing, which is quite interesting. One is we can even go back to the CVs and see, Emmanuel, right now you are responsible or you are acting in different dimensions as an architect, as I would focus on as an architect. It's quite amazing how you can perform in all those lines, whereas Zaleka, you focus, I mean, it sounds like you chose to focus on some line, and which is also another amazing success. So first, I want to know the why behind, and then the how it's possible.
I think because, like the statement you read earlier, I think architects, the training of an architect, is truly remarkable. I may be biased because I'm an architect, but I haven't come across any other professional who can think like the architect. When I discuss with another architect and with another person, the power in the discussion of an architect is truly amazing. And this is simply because of the training. And when I mentioned the scale levels, the problem-solving capacity of the architect, this is inbuilt in the trainings we take and the trainings we give here. So then the next step would be, where do you apply it? Where do you choose to apply it? One may choose to apply it in just designing buildings and following up their execution. Another person may choose to be a mayor. And I think we have the example of a mayor of Ethiopia, of Addis Ababa here, Ato Zode Taklu, who was a mayor, who actually gave a speech in one of our association's meetings, who is a mayor, a politician, who has the capacity to disintegrate, solve, and integrate. And if necessary, again, disintegrate. The city of Barcelona, they say, is one of the remarkable cities in Europe I have visited. And I was very impressed, and then I asked the question, how is this possible? And to my satisfaction, they told me that the mayor, who was quite bold enough to decide different development decisions in the city, was an architect. A mayor, an architect, and you can see the result. So, I prefer the name architect, but like Zaleka said, inside it, this is a few of the things an architect can do. At one time, I was engaged in an advisory service for commercial handicrafts, and maybe some of you from days back have been here to see the presentation of a fellow product designer that came from Indonesia to assist us. And there was no problem in doing that. And we did come up with substantial things. Some of the slides you showed, my responsibility had nothing to do with designing. There was a different architect who was responsible for the structures. My responsibility was making sure everybody did his assignment. So it was, you would call it the assignment of a project architect or a project manager. In short, the capacity of the architect to change gears to solve a problem can be applicable to various disciplines. And, call me very fanatic, but I sometimes believe if architects in this country stand up to their required professional competence, we will, it would be an amazing country.
Can I throw it back again to you with, at least to explain the why behind it, your line of practice, your opinion also on the others?
I think Amanil could do it because he's very young. Otherwise, I agree. I think the capacity, the flexibility of an architect to work in the building sector is enormous. And it's not true all of us will end up being only designers. we can be good builders because we understand building very well. And we can manage a project because we know the process, how it's designed. So I think this is an area where architects can practice. But I have chosen a very narrow area. I'm trying to test myself. So that's how I am.
Thank you. This is the time when I give it to the public. I am sure lots of issues which we already can sense, which can instigate a kind of argument, I would expect, because this is a debate.
It's interesting because I have worked with both of you, and I also understand your inclinations and also your passion for the profession. I would like to pose a question and would like to see how both of you react to it. It's regarding a current trend in the practice world where architects come as part of a team where there is another party involved, employed by the client, of course, taking the title of a project manager or a construction manager. And the architects come into the picture as a team player where the coordination work is actually taken by the project manager, and this project manager handles the work of different contractors or a single contractor. Then again, there is also another scenario when architects just come into the picture as architects, and the engineering part is also coordinated by another party. This is a scenario which is happening in some complex projects or projects taken on a bigger scale. The engineer in some cases, okay. There are engineers mostly taking this role, but architects also take this role. But how would the traditional role of the architect be in complex scenarios like this? How would both of you react if you were employed or if you get a chance to work in such a project?
Can we add one more question? Or do you want to reflect right now? Yeah. One more?
Okay, thank you. There was a discussion last Friday here concerning our curriculum, the way we train and teach our architects here. One thing which was mentioned then was, the idea of differentiating a university from a training center, and the idea of teaching students how to construct the building in some other places. This debate is also going on in the past when we established this institute. What kind of curriculum should we have?